Hey, it's almost Christmas, and you know what that means. It's that time of the year where people from all around the world leave their homes in order to visit their families and loved ones to celebrate the holidays. But not me. I've been stuck in here since Halloween. They're still out there. But enough about me. Let's talk about Alan Wake. Now I know what you're thinking. This is a Christmas video, but Alan Wake's not a Christmas game. Well, you know what I have to say to that? Take a look at this. Yeah, what does that look like to you? Yeah, that's snow. Snow means winter. Winter means Christmas. Read 'em and weep, losers. Alan Wake's a game I've known about for many years, but I've only played it for the first time fairly recently. And like most of Remedy's games, this is a true experience. I can't think of many games that have kept me hooked from start to finish, and at least 3 of those games are made by Remedy. Now, before we get into Alan Wake, I'd like to kind of explain how this video is going to go down. I've formatted it in a sort of way to mimic my experience playing through the game. I'm warning you now, this video will contain spoilers for Alan Wake, the first one. If you haven't played it, you can. I'm not going to stop you, I'm not your dad. But I recommend you do play it. Just know that this video will not replace the experience of actually playing through the game yourself. With all that said and done, let's just fucking jump right into this, guys. Let's go, gamers. Let's go, gamers. We'll start with a little history behind Remedy leading up to Alan Wake. And we'll start just after the release of Max Payne. Let's just say it did really well, and wanting to make a sequel that surpassed it in every way, Remedy would make a deal with Rockstar that would double the budget of the first game, and on top of this, Remedy would receive $10 million. Most of this would be spent on improvements to the game's visuals and increase the scale of environments and encounters. Upon its release, Max Payne 2 did just alright. It reviewed well, but didn't perform sales-wise the way Rockstar was hoping. I enjoyed the game though, and think everybody watching should play both Max Payne 1 and 2, which are available on Steam right now. But it's not like they could try again. As per Remedy's deal with Rockstar, they would no longer own the rights to Max Payne. Technically, Max Payne's journey through the night would continue, Remedy just wouldn't be the ones continuing it. Instead, they would begin working on a brand new game. A game that would revolve around a new core gameplay mechanic for which the game's systems would be built around. A core gameplay mechanic involving light. It was very clear that this new game, Alan Wake, would be a very big departure, tonally wise, from Remedy's 2 previous games. Sam Lake, the writer of Max Payne 1 and 2, as well as Alan Wake, admitted he was taking inspiration from Twin Peaks and the works of Stephen King as well as other horror media. The Twin Peaks one makes a lot of sense. You can see Sam Lake's love for the show bleed into the games he's worked on as early as the first Max Payne. Alan Wake would allow Remedy to stretch their creative muscles, as well as allow them to show off all the things they had learned working on Max Payne. They would also spend their early development working on a new engine that would allow them to drastically increase the size and complexity of levels. They would show off what was essentially a proof of concept at E3 2005. I'm sure there was a ton of hype at the time, but looking at this trailer now, look, I'm a skeptical guy. I highly doubt they would have been able to get this to perform half decently on any consumer hardware at the time. It can barely run above 15 FPS in the demo they're showing off. Early on, the game was meant to be this sort of open world experience with a full-fledged day and night cycle and even dynamic weather. It would take Remedy 6 years to develop Alan Wake. Part of that was because they had to stop what they were doing and scale back development. The game would no longer be open world, and if I'm being honest, I'm glad they decided to scale everything back for the game's release, because I genuinely don't think they would have been able to pull it off. they definitely wouldn't have been able to make it open world and keep the same graphical fidelity the final game has. In the end, Alan Wake would release on May 14th, 2010 for the Xbox 360, and later in 2012 on the PC, and like a decade later on everything else. Alan Wake starts with Alan Wake describing a dream he's having. It's an intriguing start. The writing's on point, and Matthew Peretta gives this slightly stilted performance that adds a layer of unease.
I've always had a vivid imagination, but this dream unsettled me. It was wild and dark and weird, even by my standards.
A lot of the performances in this game I would consider just alright. I don't know if Remedy did it on purpose, but everyone sounds like they came out of Silent Hill. I mean, Max Payne 1 and 2 didn't have such stilted performances, so I'd have to assume it was done on purpose. Driving down the road in his dream, Alan accidentally hits a guy. Getting out of the car to investigate, the guy seemingly disappears. Alan continues on foot to this mysterious lighthouse he's been attracted to, but not before picking up a coffee thermos. Ooh, I love coffee. All of a sudden, this strange black figure stops him.
You don't even recognize me, do you, Ryder? You think you're God? You think you can just make up stuff?
After successfully escaping this figure, he's confronted by a ray of light cast down from the heavens, voiced by none other than Max Payne himself.
You are hurt. You should go into the light. You are only safe there. I have something important to tell you. It goes like this. For he did not know that beyond the lake he called home lies a deeper, darker ocean green, where waves are both wilder and more serene. To its ports I've been. To its ports I've been. Do you understand?
No.
The strange light gives us a tutorial. Dark bad, light good. These guys are the Taken, and they're invincible until you drive the darkness out of them with your flashlight. If you're badly hurt, the light can heal you. Make sense? Good. Alan reaches the lighthouse while being pursued by this dark force and makes it inside. Safe at last, but then... It was all a dream! But we knew that already because he said it was a dream back at the beginning. Remember? Thank God it was only a dream though. Or was it? It was. Welcome to Bright Falls, Washington. It's a small town. The kind of small town where everybody knows everybody. Alan's here with his wife Alice on a sort of getaway, not just from the hustle and bustle of the big city. You see, Alan is a writer and he's got a bad case of writer's block. And is hoping a nice vacation far away from any typewriter might help clear his mind. And although he hoped to keep a low profile, he's recognized before he even makes it on shore.
I'm Pat Maid, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm Alan Wake.
I won't pretend I don't recognize a famous writer such as yourself, Mr. Wake. A pleasure.
The town of Bright Falls is chock full of fully realized and well-written characters. It's crazy to see a game like this where such a big focus is on the residents of this town, how they interact with each other and how they interact with you. It's not something you see in a lot of games. Alan heads to the local Oh Dear Diner to pick up the key to the cabin they're staying at. It's in this diner we're introduced to a bunch of characters. There's Rose Marigold, an obsessed superfan.
I am your biggest fan. I know people say that all the time, but I really am.
I'm glad to hear that.
Rusty, a local park ranger.
Try the coffee. Just don't blame me when you fall in love, 'cause it'll break your heart when you have to leave.
Rusty here is no longer human. Nothing but black coffee under a thin layer of skin.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
The Anderson brothers, Tor and Odin, local rock stars, now old and senile.
You put the lime in the coconut, drink them both up.
Just because we're
It
brothers,
does that.
don't think
Get
I
stuck.
won't murder
Yeah,
you in
you
your
need
sleep.
to give it a good solid whack.
This is it. I've died and gone to hell.
and Cynthia Weaver. She's holding a lamp and is carrying on about changing the lights.
You can hurt yourself in the dark.
I think I can handle it, ma'am.
Alan's here to get the key to the cabin from Carl Stuckey, but instead he finds a woman named Barbara Jagger dressed in black standing in the dark.
Carl couldn't make it. Unfortunately, he was taken ill. But I have the key for you and instructions on how to get to the lake.
Okay.
I wish you a good stay in my cabin. I'll come by later to check how you've settled in. And to meet your wife. I insist.
Thanks.
With the key to the cabin, they leave.
Hey, wait! Mrs. Wake! Your keys!
Cauldron Lake is heavily inspired by the real-life Crater Lake in Washington. The name Bird Lake Cabin takes inspiration from Slavic mythology, where a witch named Baba Yaga is said to live in a cabin deep in the woods, which itself stands on chicken legs. Diver's Isle itself is shaped like a bird's foot. Did you catch that? Don't worry, it was subtle. It's here we're introduced to Alice's fear of the dark. Very convenient for a main character to have a fear of darkness in a game about dark and light. Before turning the power on, you can explore the cabin and find some peculiar artifacts. A book written by a seemingly unknown author, Thomas Zane, a calendar on the wall dated July 1970, a picture of a person in a bizarre-looking diving suit, another coffee thermos. Come to think of it, there's actually nothing in this cabin from the 21st century. The only thing that comes even close to modern tech is the radio on the back deck.
For a moment, the oppressive feel of the nightmare I had seen on the ferry returned. Damn.
We get the lights on and Alice surprises us with a typewriter. They get into a pretty childish argument and Alan storms off like a teenager full of angst, and what was supposed to be an idyllic getaway soon turns into a living nightmare.
I knew she wouldn't follow me in the dark. I needed some time alone to think things through. Alice? Alice? Alice! The cabin had gone dark. All the lights were out.
Stay away from me!
Alice? Alice? Oh no!
Keep going.
Wake up.
Alice?
Alan wakes up, only remembering the argument he had with Alice. He's alone in the wreckage of his own car. Was that just a dream? I'm gonna use this moment now to talk about just how gorgeous this game is. It's absolutely stunning, and it really comes down to Remedy's ingenious use of state-of-the-art lighting technology. The volumetric lighting and god rays shown off in this game are just perfect. In 2010, this tech was in its infancy, and many still consider it state-of-the-art today. Most games back then would just fake it with a 2D sprite that faded out when you got too close. Alan Wake shows off its graphical fidelity front and center. The levels in this game are truly gigantic. Some even require vehicles to traverse. Yet they still managed to pack every area with so much detail, it's hard to believe this game came out in 2010. Even in these huge open levels, they managed to make the forest environments dense in foliage. Every area was made with the idea of exploration in mind. Add on top of that the volumetric lighting, the god rays, and even the fog. Every time I saw a sunset or sunrise, I could almost pass it off as being real. On Alan's way to find help, he sees a bright light which leaves behind some papers. It turns out these pages are from a manuscript Alan himself seems to have written, although he has no memory of ever writing it. Very strange. As you play, you'll periodically stumble across these manuscript pages, which are conveniently narrated by Alan for you. That's right, the entire time this game was secretly a book. There's 13 pages we can find in this first level, 3 of which can only be found on the Nightmare difficulty. At first, they probably won't make any sense, but as you go through and pick them up, you'll begin to realize they seem to be predicting future events.
At first, I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy, or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice. I heard them before I saw them, swooping down from the sky and screeching as they came. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. I raised the flashlight and the swarm exploded like fireworks. Feathers burned, turned into ash. I couldn't hear my scream above theirs. The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake.
So are they predicting the future, or are they dictating it? And who really wrote the manuscript? Alan Wake surely, but when did he do it and why? So many questions without any answers in sight. Hey, do you remember Carl Stuckey? Well, it turns out he's been taken, and also he, really wants to kill you. He's been taken by whatever dark force also took Alan's wife. And it's not just Stuckey out here with Alan. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the gameplay. It's surprisingly simple, but I wouldn't say it's perfect. The hardest thing to get used to in going from Max Payne 2 to Alan Wake was the camera and the focus on animation-based systems. It's kind of difficult to describe exactly how the camera works. I guess the easiest way to explain it is that it's not actually centered on your character. I'm not talking about Alan being in the corner of the screen. When you turn the camera, it seems to be following some invisible thing to the left of Alan. This also means that in order to go straight, you have to kind of look slightly to the right of where you're going. It's bizarre and it did take a while to get used to. I know there's an option to use more traditional third-person camera, but I'm all for playing the game the way the devs intended. And besides, after a while I kinda got used to it, and it wasn't that bad. The animation-based systems didn't bother me nearly as bad as I thought they would either. For those who don't know, animation-based means that all inputs from the player as well as in-game systems rely on character animations. It basically makes the game look more realistic or more immersive, but if implemented poorly, it can make a game absolutely unbearable. Most modern games are animation-based. Take Rockstar Games for example, and compare GTA San Andreas released in 2004 to Red Dead Redemption 2 released in 2018. The differences are noticeable, and it really comes down to personal preference. Back to Alan Wake, I think it's implemented just right. It's subtle, just enough to give character to Alan's actions. He'll often stumble into a sprint or nearly fall over when trying to dodge. It adds a human side that's often missing. I mean, Alan Wake isn't a soldier, he's not a superhero, he's a writer. He's just some guy. And the types of enemies complement the animation system pretty well. Speaking of enemies, this game has a few of them. There's actually only one enemy type, the Taken. If that seems simple, it's because it is. Like I said before, the Taken are citizens of Bright Falls who have been, taken by whatever dark force has control over the town. The most common Taken you'll find act almost like zombies. They'll always make a beeline straight towards you, they're not too awfully fast, and some of them have weapons. A knife or an axe which they'll try to throw at you. The Taken are completely invincible and only become vulnerable to damage once you've driven some of the darkness out of them. This is done with a flashlight, Alan's main weapon of choice. When you shine it at an enemy, there's a neat little reticle that shows how close you are to saving them or killing them. I don't know. I mean, you drive the darkness out, but they still want to kill you. Maybe everyone in the town just really doesn't like Alan. Once they're vulnerable, all you have to do is just blow them the fuck away. Then there's the sort of mini-boss Taken. They move extremely fast and take longer too. I can't think of a good term to describe exactly what we're doing here. Expunging the darkness? Yeah, that sounds right. They take longer to expunge and will have a little more health than a regular Taken. But the flashlight you use runs on batteries, a limited resource in the game. You can carry 20 at a time, and for some reason they're all Energizer. When you run out of juice in your flashlight, you can either replace the batteries or wait for the flashlight to recharge, which takes some time. So you'll find yourself in combat and you'll need to choose which is best, replacing them or running in circles waiting for the light to recharge. An interesting mechanic in needing to manage resources in stressful situations, but they give you way too many batteries. I almost always end a section off with like 15 to 20. But enough about Energizer, I want to know what happens next. Let's start with the fact that Alan keeps having visions of this woman dressed in black. Very weird. He also comes across the radio. Turning it on will play a station hosted by Pat Maine. We We actually met him back on the ferry into town. Right now he's interviewing Maurice Horton, who's calling in to let him and others know about his missing dog.
Well, I was just outside for a breath of fresh air, and what a night. I know most of you are probably in your beds by now, but if you're still up and around, take a moment. Step outside for a spell and breathe in deep. What are you up to?
Well, I was just taking Toby on his walkies.
Oh, isn't it beautiful out there?
Sure, but Pat, the reason I called is that Toby heard something rustling in the undergrowth and took off after it, and I couldn't find him.
Probably a rabbit.
Usually he comes back, but we were pretty far from home, and it sounds like he went pretty wild there. Great dog, but he's just too dumb for his own good.
Well, Maurice, it's out there now. Hope Toby comes home soon.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
You have a good night now.
Something seems off about all of this. Soon after, we can also find a TV. Turning it on will play an episode of a show called Night Springs.
It bestows immortality on those who advance it to elevate all of mankind. Newton, Einstein, Sagan, princes among men. But the price for such a legacy is steep indeed. In Night Springs. Tonight's episode, a quantum suicide.
This episode is about a man who creates a machine that will make him invincible, but it gets unplugged and he shoots himself.
Insane! Hey, was this thing supposed to be plugged in? I stumbled on it.
You fools! Gaze upon quantum immortality.
Poor Dr. Colvin, felled by his own hubris or the ignorance of the masses.
What a show. We won't find out until later, but Alan Wake actually wrote some of the episodes of this show. We can periodically find TVs playing episodes of Night Springs. This little show might be the most bizarre part of this whole game. This show is just, it's out there, it's bizarre. Later in the game you can actually find an episode about a plot hole. Like the whole theme of the episode is revolving around this plot hole. A hole in the story or a hole in the reality of the story. It really is out there.
Really? But what is it?
I guess the temptation is to call it a hole, but it's really an absence. Profound lack of reality.
In Martha's basement?
Yes, it was doing so well until I came up with two old ladies and put something really weird in the basement. It was a great start. Completely locked now. I can't imagine what I was up to.
Anyway, Alan has a gun. It's a dinky little revolver, but it'll do for now. Alan can actually hold two different guns at a time, a primary and a secondary. There's the revolver, of course, and then there's a hunting rifle and two different types of shotguns. Later on, you can find a flare gun, road flares, and flash grenades. Why anyone out here has flash grenades is a mystery that will never be solved. A lot of this stuff can be found in caches that are marked by what seems to be glow-in-the-dark paint. Who's putting these caches full of batteries, flares, and ammo for guns in the middle of the woods? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out later, okay? Stop asking so many goddamn questions. After an intense battle with Stucky in a lumberyard, we finally put an end to his misery. Alan then reaches a gas station. Turns out it's Stucky's own gas station. Outside we can find a sign stating that Deerfest is only a week away, even though it was 2 weeks away when Alan arrived. So despite us only seeing a day pass, it turns out an entire week's passed. So Alan heads inside and,
All right. I'll keep writing. Outside there's only darkness. Outside the cabin, outside the story, there's only darkness. I can feel her presence in the dark. Just now, I could smell her perfume in the room. I'll reach her, I'll fix it up. I'll bring her back. The story will come true. If I stop, she's lost. I don't believe this. It'd been me on the TV, talking crazy. Was I losing my mind?
yeah, I think you might be. Alan uses the phone inside to call the sheriff. Sheriff Sarah Breaker asks Alan if he knows where Carl Stucky is, and, yeah, we just killed him. Alan is adamant that he and Alice were staying at a cabin on Cauldron Lake, but Sheriff Breaker insists there is no such cabin, and when they go to look, turns out there really is no cabin.
a candy-colored clown they call the Sandman.
And then, whoa, hold on, wait, what? End of episode 1? Yeah, it turns out this game is episodic. A lot of games in the late 2000s and early 2010s were. I understand Remedy wanting to jump on that bandwagon, but unlike most other games, Alan Wake released all its episodes at once. And it really wasn't Remedy's fault. They originally wanted to release the game one episode at a time digitally, but Microsoft forced them to release the entire game at once on a retail disc, which leads to the game having these recaps in between episodes for no other reason than aesthetics. Let's take a moment between episodes to catch up on what we know. We know there's a dark force at play, infecting and taking control of people to do its bidding. It also seems that this dark presence is exclusively trying to kill Al, although we can't be too sure of that right now. It also seems that none of the locals actually know what's going on, except maybe that lady that we met at the diner. Now, let's try to wrap our heads around the manuscript. As I said, there are 13 pages we can find in this first episode, all seemingly written by Alan himself, and all seemingly predicting future events. But how? Why? Who, what, when, and where? I don't know. There's a lot of questions raised after the end of episode 1. Maybe we'll find out some answers in episode 2. Episode 2 starts with a flashback. We see Alan and Alice living in an apartment in New York City. How quaint. Wait, what is that? Is that a QR code? What the hell? Okay. Looks like Alan's been taking some of the world-famous Max Payne pills. We can find a couple of pages on Alan's most recent novel, The Sudden Stop. Strangely, these are narrated not by Alan, but by Max Payne.
This was a late goodbye. 13 years after I'd gotten my revenge, it had finally caught up with me. It had been a long time to bear the pain. My blood painted the snow red. A gruesome slushy dissolved all the scattered painkillers and leisurely dripped down to the sewer, mingling with the bile of the city, becoming one with it. I can see them now, my wife and my baby. Honey, I'm home.
Okay, for real, it's not actually Max Payne. We don't actually know who this voice belongs to yet, but it's the same voice of that light we saw during the dream sequence at the start, so it's probably tied to that. The power suddenly goes out and we get to see more of Alice's fear of the dark.
I'm right here, baby.
I'm fine. Just get the lights back on, now, please.
Honey, it's a power outage. I've got the flashlight.
Okay. Hi.
You okay?
I'm sorry. It just really spooked me.
Don't worry. We'll just break out the candles.
Sitting in the dark, Alan tells Alice a story about when he was a child, about the nightmares he used to have.
I used to have these nightmares when I was a kid. The dark really spooked me, too. When it got really bad, my mom gave me this old light switch. She called it the clicker.
The clicker, huh?
Yeah. If I ever got scared of the dark, I could just flip the switch and a magic light would scare the monsters away.
Oh, sure.
Here it is.
Alan.
He gives her the clicker and promises it will help her too. Yeah, a lot of good that did. In the present day, Alan is at a local police station being looked at by the local doctor, an avid fisherman, Nelson.
I'm sorry you had to cut your morning fishing short for this, Doc.
Oh, she's a beauty, ain't she? Not the biggest I ever caught, if you can believe that coming from an old fisherman like me, but she's right up there. You can't get me off the water this time of year. Closest thing to heaven.
I'll take your word for it, Doc.
He concludes that there's nothing wrong with Alan and sends him to meet with Sheriff Breaker. On the way, we encounter Cynthia Weaver again, raving about the lights in the police station needing changed.
The bulbs will need changing soon. You can't change them in the dark.
I'll be sure to take care of it, Miss Weaver. Have a nice day now.
Very good. I'll come back later on to remind you, just in case.
We can also hear over the police radio that they haven't actually located Stucky yet.
Yeah, it's Mulligan here. I'm at Stucky's gas station with Thornton. There's no sign of him. Over.
Wait. Yeah, this is Thornton. Look, we've located the parade float. It's here. That's some good news, right? Stucky was supposed to be driving it at the rehearsals today. Over.
Oh, give me that. Mulligan here. Looks like someone really thrashed the garage. Over.
Okay, roger that, guys. Keep looking for Stucky. Jane's out.
Let's hope for Alan's sake that they never do. We're about to be questioned by Sheriff Breaker when Alan gets a call.
Excuse me, I need to take this. Hello?
Alan, please help me.
Alice?
Stop talking to the law. You'll do exactly what I say if you ever want to see your wife again.
Who is this?
Go to the back lot. There's a hole in the fence on the left. Look inside the junker. I left a little something there to convince you we're all on the same page here. After you ditch the cops, you're gonna meet me in Elderwood National Park. There's a spot called Lover's Peak.
Mr. Wake, can I help you with anything?
Don't do nothing stupid, pal.
Slipping out the back entrance, we can encounter this fine man who gives us all the juicy deets about the crime he's committed.
Don't let anybody tell you different. You know, I shouldn't even be in here. The cops, they got it all wrong. See, sure, I beat him up, but I wasn't drunk. I mean, I wasn't drunk at the time. I only got drunk afterward. That wasn't Danny. It only looked like him. It was a goddamn space alien! I know it sounds like something a drunk would say, but believe me, I wasn't drunk then.
Outside, we can find the old pickup truck, and inside, Alice's driver license. The kidnapper's clearly not messing around. Heading back inside, we're ambushed by a bright light. Oh, it's just a TV.
A writer is a light that reveals the world of his story from darkness, shapes it from nothingness. The way a sculptor carves a statue from a block of granite. If I stop, the world I'm making dies. Darkness will reclaim it. It's a long, hard journey into the dark. Alice's life is at stake, but I can't think about that, or I'll lose it. The dread lingers at the edge of perception. I'll push on. Anything is possible here. I'll write the story. I'll save her.
On the way out, we get introduced to...
I'm Dr. Emil Hartman. I'd like to invite you to stay at Cauldron Lake Lodge.
Did you talk to my wife?
I had the pleasure of discussing your situation with her on several occasions.
Did you set something up with her?
I invited her here. My clinic is a place where...
Oh, hey! Oh, my! Take it easy.
And of course...
Hey, nobody move! Get your hands off of my client!
Who are you?
I'm Barry Wheeler, his agent. If you have business with Mr. Wake, you talk to me. You yokels won't know what hit you once I sick my lawyers on your asses.
No harm done, Sarah. I'm all right. I don't want to press charges. Mr. Wake, my offer still stands.
What the hell was that about, Al? We don't need a replay of that thing with the paparazzi. I thought they were gonna lock you up.
Alan explains everything that's happened in the last week to Barry. Well, everything he can remember, which isn't a lot. And obviously Barry is a bit of a skeptic.
Just listen to yourself. What, you shot a guy? And his body just disappeared? When was the last time you slept? What, are you high? Have you been drinking?
Alan gets set up in a cabin at the Elderwood National Park and prepares to head up to Lover's Peak. We get a chance to have a short conversation with Rusty here, where he'll warn you about bear traps being laid out in the park.
If you take a walk in the woods, watch your steps so you don't end up like Max. I guess I'm a little worried. We got a bunch of campers out there we haven't heard from. It's not like these people are on a schedule, but with the traps, well, you know. I just don't want any trouble.
Right, thanks.
Alan spends the rest of the day trying to convince Barry of what happened, but to no avail, so he heads out at dusk in the direction of Lover's Peak, with a flashlight and a gun in hand. Let me just have a quick look around and, yep, game is still gorgeous. On the way back to the park's main office, we can find more Pat Maine and another episode of Night Springs. On the radio, Pat's talking to Dr. Nelson about the upcoming Deer Fest.
Best plan like? My plan? You make it sound a lot more organized than I ever seem to manage. No plan, really, just taking the atmosphere. No, not this year. See, Pat, I'm just not that competitive anymore. Now I just like to take my time and enjoy the peace of it.
Considering your track record, the participants are probably pretty happy you feel that way.
And tonight's episode of Night Springs is even more bizarre than the last.
So,
You're confessing to killing that guy, huh? Why?
And it coming?
Yeah, but why would you do that? I mean, you're a nice guy. Normal. Took a kid to a soccer game. So how come at the game, you pick a guy and, quoting from the arresting officer's report here, assault the victim's head area repeatedly with the weapon of choice being a pair of bare fists?
I didn't like his face?
Well, you must have hated it, because you really went to town there. I mean, there's no way to tell what he looked like. No ID on him either. But then we ran the fingerprints. Got a match. Your prints. Identical.
Huh, how about that?
Your son said you were wearing a white shirt when you took him to the game. But the white shirt is on the dead guy.
I had plenty of time to talk to my boy before the cops arrived, you know? He won't stop screaming, am I right? You think he's ever gonna be okay? I left my mark. Believe me.
You bastard.
What? You gonna shoot me? What's the point? I'm going to prison. You got me.
I don't understand any of this.
And you never will. Don't worry. Maybe you'll see me again, Agent. Maybe in the mirror.
Alan can also find another interesting page on his way back down the hill. It describes the death of Rusty, and as we reach the visitor center, the page seems to come true right before our eyes.
The air in the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped.
It happened just the way it was on that page. It'll come back for me. You must... The lights. In the office. I have the key.
Okay, Rusty. Hang on. I'll be right back.
Rusty!
The ground was covered with oily patches that looked like liquid darkness.
Fishing!
Urges up, Park. Fishing. License, obey!
The Park Ranger's instructions.
At all times.
Rusty, no!
Never.
After this, we can find a few pages that flesh out Rusty's character, but you know, he's dead, so whatever. On the way to Lover's Peak, Whoa! You are very large. This guy's one of the brute type enemies. They have a ton more health than regular Taken and have this wind-up attack where they'll charge at you. Their attacks do a ton of damage, but don't worry because one well-placed flare round will take care of them. Oh, the flare gun. The best weapon in the game. One shot will send out an explosion of light that will kill any enemy directly in the blast radius. Any other close by enemies will have the darkness quickly expunged from their weak little bodies. The flare gun makes any enemy encounter a complete cakewalk. You'd think because it's so overpowered they limit the amount of ammo in levels, but no, they give you a shit ton of flare rounds. It's actually ridiculous. Continuing on, it's clear that the Dark Force is attempting to manipulate the physical environment around you in order to stop you.
We gotta get moving. More of them coming. That flashlight's kid stuff. The flares will keep the bastards away.
This is Mott. He's the apparent kidnapper, and despite Alan's want for his wife back, he needs to work with Mott in order to escape the incoming horde. This is where we get a formal introduction to road flares. They're alright. You can hold them or throw them, and the light they emit will slowly expunge the darkness from the Taken while keeping them at a safe distance. This is also the first real gauntlet, and although I died a couple of times at the start, after realizing the game wanted me to use all the flares it gave me instead of hoarding them, it became really simple. Just keep a good amount of distance between you and the Taken and you'll be fine. After this, we learn Mott's actually read some of the manuscript pages. So if he's read the page where this confrontation happens, why doesn't he attempt to stop it from happening? This happens with Alan too, where he'll read a page saying something is about to happen, and then it happens and he's surprised. The manuscript pages do really only add a little fluff to the story. At first I assumed picking up the pages would allow Alan to plan ahead and prepare for situations the page describes, rewriting the story in a way, but that's not the case. What you read is what happens, it's like destiny. So of course Mott gets away and we have to chase him down. He has Alan's wife after all.
I had heard the plane fall. It made no sense. It was clear that it had just fallen heavy, but it was very old and obviously hadn't flown in decades. Looking at it sent a shiver down my spine.
Okay, well now they're just ripping off Lost. Alan goes ahead and steals someone's car. It probably belonged to one of the guys we killed anyway. And he drives it back to Barry, who's got a front row seat to a live version of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. With that and the commotion back at the ranger station, Barry is a firm believer. Mott also calls, demanding the manuscript that Alan doesn't have. He asks for a week to finish the manuscript, but Mott only gives him 2 days. When the sun comes up, Barry goes into town to find any information about the missing island on Cauldron Lake. Alan stays and tries to write something, anything, to end the story and save his wife, but, he's got writer's block. In town, Barry gets a call from Rose. You remember Rose. She says she's found the rest of the manuscript pages, but it's immediately clear that something's wrong. She's been taken.
Come here. Pretty please.
So we've ended episode 2 with a little bit of dramatic irony and an actual end goal, that being to find the manuscript pages in order to save Alice. That ending though was crazy, but it brings up a couple of questions. And this might just be me, but if the manuscript is dictating what's happening, and the Dark Force is taking control of Rose to trick Alan and Barry, is it doing this outside the influence of the manuscript, or is it doing it because it's written in the manuscript? We've seen a few times now that even if someone reads the manuscript and knows what's going to happen, they're either unable or unwilling to attempt to try and change it. And we'll actually be able to see more examples of this in future episodes. It's just a little thing I picked up on. After finishing the episode, we have to ask ourselves, what have we learned about the manuscript pages? Well, not a lot. We know that the manuscript is somehow controlling the course of the story, but we still don't know how. I think it's safe to say that Alan did write it, even if he has no memory of doing so. It would fit snugly in the week-long gap between the cabin and the car wreck. Also, we keep seeing these, broadcasts or visions on the TV that show Alan writing the story. It would make sense that the Dark Force made him write the pages and somehow she's making them come true, but at the same time, she can influence things outside of the manuscript, so is it her or the manuscript that's actually in control? We don't know yet. We'll just have to wait and see. Episode 3 wastes no time because we're already at the trailer park. Randolph, the manager, lets us in and leads us to Rose's trailer. On the way, Barry lets us in on what he's found so far.
I found all sorts of weird stuff from the local newspaper's archives. This place is crazy. Disappearances, mysterious deaths, urban legends come true, and get this, most of this stuff takes place around Cauldron Lake. There was an island there owned by a guy called Thomas Zane. Now, some of the articles I found about him make him out to be a famous writer, but I ran a bunch of searches, couldn't find a single thing he wrote. The volcano under the lake erupted in 1970, and Zane went down with the island. A local girl, Barbara Jagger, drowned in Cauldron Lake just a week earlier. They were lovers. All of the articles about this stuff were written by Cynthia Weaver. I asked around, and she's that crazy bag lady you met. She knew both Jagger and Zane before they both died, and she had some kind of a breakdown.
Cynthia Weaver wrote all the articles Barry could find on Thomas Zane, and she went crazy after his death. It was all too obvious. She knew. Of course she knew. She knew, and that's why she's always ranting and raving about keeping the lights on and operational at all times. She knew that this evil presence lived and thrived in the dark. Thomas Zane was a writer, and he lived with Barbara Jagger on Diver's Isle, named so because he enjoyed diving. He must be the man in the diver suit that we've seen flashes of. And even though they both perished in Cauldron Lake, they seem to still exist in some other form. But Alan doesn't give a shit about any of that right now. He's laser focused on getting the manuscript. What is that? A boat that inexplicably fell out of the sky last night? I don't care. Hey Rose, where's the pages? What is this, coffee? Oh, it tastes like shit. Hey, wait, why does this smell like Rohypnol?
It's coming for you, hiding in my barber's skin.
Wait, you're not Max Payne. You're Thomas Zane.
I'm too weak to stop it. You must turn the lights on.
I promised I'd come visit you and your lovely wife. You must finish what you started. I insist.
You must turn the lights on. Turn the light on.
Back to work, boy.
This scene is actually genuinely fucking awesomely done. Waking up hours later, Alan finds Rose in a trance on the ground and Barry out cold. Rose was a bit more than just a fan. I think it's funny that out of all the people you could obsess over in 2010, you chose a novelist. So Barbara Jagger made Alan write the manuscript, and also apparently made Thomas Zane write a book? This just begs so many questions. One of those being, why? On his way out of the trailer park, Alan stopped by one Agent Nightingale, who's very trigger happy and also never refers to Alan by his actual name, which I think is just the funniest thing.
Get him up, Hemingway! You're under arrest!
We can actually find a couple of manuscript pages in the previous episode that set up this encounter with Nightingale. They make him out to be a bit of a prick. Anyway, Nightingale tries to do a murder, but Alan escapes into the woods. The chase is on. Dude, what the fuck? They've got an entire army out here. Well, they must have found out about the... Wait, hold on, let me check. The 193 people I've killed in just the last 2 days. Halfway through the chase, the Dark Presence shows up in order to help Alan escape? Yeah, I guess that's rad. Yeah, that's cool. I'm sorry, the helicopter? A helicopter. Okay, let's assume they don't know all about the guys Alan's killed. What the fuck did he do? What does Nightingale think Alan's done? For once, the birds are actually on our side. Okay, so the Dark Presence is putting up barriers now? So does it want us to escape or not? Earlier it seemed like it did, but I guess it changed its mind. Alan reaches the radio station and meets Pat Maine. Remember him? Well, Alan doesn't get a chance to explain why he's even there when Nightingale shows back up and once again attempts to shoot Alan, nearly hitting Pat instead. Alan escapes again.
I'll get you yet, even if it kills me, you hear me? You hear me, H.P. Lovecraft?
God, this game is so beautiful. There's this cool area up ahead where you can actually go up a nearby mountain. From there you can see where you're going, the train depot, the radio station where you just came from, a lookout tower where you just were earlier in the level, and behind the trees, the trailer park where you started. And from that lookout tower you can actually see Stucky's gas station from all the way back in episode 1. These landmarks go a long way in making these levels feel like part of a real place. You can even find a map of Bright Falls in the game, like residue left over from when the game was meant to be open world. The coolest part is that the map actually lines up with the levels themselves. It's just amazing the amount of detail Remedy put into the game world itself. You know, Remedy, you guys are alright.
The bulldozer's engine roared to life. Mud and rocks flew as it fought for traction. It crashed the concrete wall and landed heavily in the yard. If it were an animal, it would have shaken its head after the impact, fixed its eyes on me, and charged. Of course, it had no head, nor eyes. Shadows crawled on its form, twisting it into a monster. Then, it came for me.
Oh, well, okay, I see how it is. You know what, I take it back, Remedy, you guys suck. Okay, I didn't mean it. So Alan gets to the depot and, well, you already know what happens. The fight's surprisingly simple. Just dodge it and assault it with light. In light, you can hurt them. Yeah, no shit, who even wrote this? What? It's daytime? Yeah, the game actually lets you wind down and just explore for a little bit. Let you take in the beautiful scenery. Let you reflect on everything. So we make it to the new meeting spot, but of course he never shows. Instead he calls us to set up a new meeting spot, so we head there. Oh, and by the way, random inanimate objects will now come to life and fling themselves at you. Wow, very cool. I love it.
There was no way the flashbang grenades were standard power company equipment.
That is weird, but they are super useful, so I'm not going to question it. This whole time we're actually being pursued by the Dark Presence. It's hard to say if it's actually trying to kill you or if it's just pursuing you. Tunnels go to Cauldron Lake. Who's down here writing this shit? We can find this seemingly long abandoned building on the way to Mirror Peak. Entering the basement, we can find writing all over the walls. Tom is scrolled on the wall repeatedly. I miss you, Tom. You talked to me on TV. I curse you, Thomas Zane. And then written in a heart is CW plus TZ. Cynthia Weaver and Thomas Zane. So it seems that Cynthia Weaver's been the one writing these messages. She must have somehow been in love with Thomas Zane. But what doesn't make sense is why Cynthia misses Thomas, but also hates him enough to curse his name. Making it to Mirror Peak, we can hear Mott speaking to someone, pleading with them. Once we make it there, we can see him on his knees. Getting closer reveals who he was talking to. We're halfway through the game now, and stuff's starting to get pretty spicy. Let's start with FBI Special Agent Nightingale. He's an FBI agent. We could pick up a couple of manuscript pages in episode 2 that allude to his introduction, but after we're formally introduced to him, we get a flood of lore to his character. Through the manuscript pages, we can learn a little bit about his character. First of all, he doesn't even want to be in Bright Falls. He hates it here. He hates the trees, and he hates the coffee. What a dick. He's an alcoholic with an itchy trigger finger, and he really wants to get Alan Wake dead or alive. And it seems Nightingale would prefer dead. He somehow has a few manuscript pages, and he seems to have an idea of what might be going on, but why he even came here and why he's so keen on killing Alan is still a mystery. For all I know, some of the manuscript pages might have just materialized on his desk, telling him exactly what's going to happen to him. He believes it and he wants to put a stop to it. That's all I've really got on that. We also have an official introduction to Thomas Zane and Barbara Jagger. Thomas Zane was a writer who apparently wrote a lot of poems. He fell in love with Barbara and they moved into the cabin on Cauldron Lake. One day Barbara drowned in the lake. Zane is bereaved but not completely hopeless. He believes there's something special about Cauldron Lake. Something inside the lake, or maybe the lake itself has the power to make things come true. And Barry, I guess, is arrested and Mott is dead. And also, Mott didn't actually have Alice. He admitted to it.
Sorry, please, lady. The boss didn't know who he was messing with. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. We don't have his wife. We don't know where she is. She's probably drowned. We just said we had her to make a play ball. You see? They got him writing for us. Please.
He never actually had Alice. He just lied so he could have leverage to get the manuscript pages. Some of the pages we can find about Mott refer to him having a boss, someone else who's really pulling the strings in order to get the pages. And if Mott didn't have Alice, then the Dark Presence surely does. And it's official, Alan did write the manuscript, and the Dark Presence made him do it. But somehow Alan was able to break free, possibly with the help of Thomas Zane. I'm still not exactly sure how Cynthia Weaver fits in. She was a reporter in the 70s who I guess was in love with Thomas. After his death, she went crazy and somehow knew about the Dark Presence involvement and spent the last 40 years making sure it had nowhere to hide in town. The burnt out hallway light at the diner in town, along with the arrival of a famous writer, was enough to wake this Dark Presence up. What doesn't make a lot of sense is these weird visions Alan keeps seeing of himself on TVs. Like, why is he seeing this? How is he seeing this? I do believe they're actually happening in front of him. He's not hallucinating. It just makes no sense why he's seeing them. The Dark Presence has no reason to show them to Alan. OMG, stop talking about nothing and get on to what happens next. Okay. Alright, I will.
Maybe it was just a nightmare.
Alice. There you go, Alan. Hartman, I fell.
I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period.
What?
Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now. The shock of your wife's death triggered a mental illness.
No, you're lying.
You're suffering from various symptoms of undifferentiated schizophrenia.
Bastard.
It's okay, Alan. Just let go.
So Alice is apparently dead and Alan has schizophrenia. I don't know. That would literally explain everything. A manuscript? Monsters? Nah, bro, you're just crazy. So Hartman gives us a tour of the Cauldron Lake Lodge. But if we've been here for over a week, then why are we getting the tour now? Has Alan been in a psychotic state this whole time? So Alan gets a chance to look around the lodge and meet some of its residents. There's Emerson, the crazy game dev. You can find his room upstairs with an Xbox 360 and a copy of a Night Springs video game. There's also this whiteboard in his room, which I'm pretty sure is some sort of pre-release storyboard for Alan Wake that they just shoved in the game. There's this funny lady, a guy who's been painting pictures of Alan, a sundial with a quote from Thomas Zane. Oh, and also Tor and Odin are here. Wait, a sundial with a quote from Thomas Zane. So Tor and Odin are a couple of interesting little characters. They have quite a lot to say here, and they keep calling us Tom and Zane. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? They dump a hell of a lot of exposition here, talking about the Anderson farm, Baba Yaga, taking pieces from people, physical and mental, talking about the lake giving artists power. They also hand you a page, seemingly from the manuscript you wrote.
Zane could feel the poems, taking form, shaping things. As he experimented, he imagined he could almost feel the power surging through the keys of the typewriter. It exhilarated him. But there was fear, too. If not for his young assistant Emil, he would have given it up. But Emil convinced him otherwise. He too had a way with words.
Hartman knew all along. He was Tom's assistant and he pushed Tom to write. That's why he set up a clinic at Cauldron Lake, in order to use artists. Exactly what for is still a little ambiguous, but it's clear that Hartman wanted Alan here to use him. Did Hartman know about the dark presence in the lake, though? Does he know just how powerful it's become?
Something's wrong. I'm not myself. It's hard to think. There's a shadow inside my head. I can only focus on writing. Everything else is a blur. I'm trapped in this cabin. Have been for days, but it's always dark outside. My editor is real. I saw her again. She's not human. It's not human. A dark presence is wearing the old woman's face. She was covered in clinging shadows. There's a hole in her chest where her heart should be. I think I've made a horrible mistake. I don't think I'm any closer to saving Alice. It's been lying to me, using me to get the story it wants, and the story will come true.
We can find a QR code here as well. Scanning it will take us to this. Never change, Sam. So Alan tries to write as a storm approaches, but he just can't get anything out. All of a sudden, there's a ruckus downstairs. Going down there, Alan finds Tor and Odin standing over a nurse, Hartman's right hand locked in the staff room. We could take the keys to get to Hartman's office. Wow, that is a terrible, terrible photo right there. If it wasn't obvious before, yes, Mott is working for Hartman.
Now, Mrs. Wake, can you tell me about Alan's problems?
He's more and more out of control all the time. The parties, he's so angry all the time. He's getting violent.
Do you mean with you?
No, not with me. No, never. Sometimes I almost wish Alan would take a swing at me, because at least that'd lead to a conversation he couldn't just march out of. But no. Alan doesn't really sleep. And the work, well, he's not writing at all. He sits there for hours and just gets more and more frustrated. And I can't talk to him.
Yes. Tell me, Mrs. Wake. What would you say to him if he'd listen?
I don't know. I want to say, I look at you, and it's not you. Just some stranger who resembles you. Looking out from behind your eyes, and I don't like that guy much. And now it's all gonna go to hell.
But you don't ever say this.
No, No. I've tried, but he's not listening. He's too deep in his own problems, always going on about something else. I'm so afraid I'm gonna lose him, and we're not even talking anymore. He doesn't let me in anymore. He just keeps me in the dark. I'm so alone here, even when he's home. Please help me, Doctor, because I'm at my wit's end.
Well, if you can just get him here, I'll absolutely do my very best.
Yeah, but Doctor, you need to be careful with him. He's not just going to listen to you and cooperate. He's the most stubborn man I've ever met.
Well, I'll be sure to bear that in mind.
I'm buying that. I was tailing Wheeler, and this is the only place he could have gone. That means Wake is probably there too!
Agent Nightingale, this is private property, and I will not allow you to disturb my patients.
Yeah? I can get a warrant. How would your fragile little patients like that?
Oh, I'm thoroughly intimidated by your mighty authority now, Agent.
Listen, you smug snob. How would you like it if I busted through this gate and knocked you around a little?
Agent Nightingale, first of all, I'm recording this conversation, so you might want to watch what you say. Secondly, you're not dealing with a hick now. I know the law, and if you can get a judge to grant a warrant, I'll be glad to cooperate. But you won't get one. Be advised that any further communications with me are to be made through my lawyer.
I don't believe this.
Good day, Agent.
Yeah.
How long have we been here? Alan finds Barry locked in a closet, and together they bust into Hartman's office. Alan confronts Hartman and forces him to tell the truth.
Ah, well, it was worth a shot. Really, Wake, come on. Let's work together on this. You have no idea.
Hartman, shut up! Barry, get out of here. I'll catch up with you. Get a car.
Oh, Al, let's just...
Go!
Wake, listen to me. This is a mistake. Don't you see? Together we can create something absolutely wonderful. With your ability and mine.
Confronted by the Dark Force, Alan escapes and locks Hartman in the room where he's taken or killed. I mean, who really cares what happens to him? It's not like he's gonna show up in another game or anything. So we make it to the front gate and it's locked, but instead of trying to break the lock or climb over the wall, Barry's like, go through the fucking hedge maze. So I guess we're gonna go through the fucking hedge maze. Don't trust Emil. I think it's a little too late for that message. We fight Emil's right hand, some birds, this guy with an axe, and make it through the maze where Barry's waiting. Together they drive off into the night, while the lodge behind them is being consumed by the darkness. They're heading to the Anderson farm in order to find answers on how to beat the darkness. On the way, the dark presence causes some rocks to fall, which causes them to veer off the road and down a sheer cliff. But don't worry, because everyone's fine. Nothing bad ever happens to the main characters. So here we are once again, alone, in the woods. Never thought I'd say this, but I'm starting to get sick of seeing these trees. Barry's fine, but got separated from Alan in the crash, so we decide to wander aimlessly through the woods and, hope for the best. Really, that's been the plan the whole fucking time.
Agent Nightingale stared at the passed out rider. The man was sleeping off one hell of a night. Nightingale felt a stab of envy at Wake's oblivion, but he had a job to do. He put the gun to Wake's head and almost became a murderer. His hand shook and his throat felt tight and dry. Biting his teeth, he tried again to pull the trigger. He lost the nerve. Wake stirred. Nightingale would have to settle for an arrest.
Again, why does Nightingale want to kill Alan so badly? I don't understand it. Does he somehow think Wake is a witch or something? You know what? He probably does.
I'm trying to deliver each page to the right time and place. I'm trying to show you how the story goes.
Thomas Zane! It's Thomas Zane in the flesh, in blood, and the voice. It's beautiful. It's true. Thomas Zane has been influencing us since the very start of the game. The second the Dark Presence sensed Alan on the ferry, so did Tom, and he immediately sprung into action in an attempt to at least prepare us for the worst. That also means Thomas Zane was the one narrating those pages from the sudden stop. The page dropped here officially explains the Dark Presence goal: to grow stronger and eventually break free from the story it's forced to follow. And it is forced to follow it. Alan was meant to write the Dark Presence into power, and then the story would play out. So does that mean that it doesn't even matter? Is it set in stone? Is the Dark Presence gonna win no matter what? I don't know. Hey, remember that guy in the jail cell back at the start of the game? Well, he's dead. Around here you can find a page explaining what happens to the lodge patients. It's nice to know they all made it out okay. We finally reach Barry at the huge stage on the edge of the Anderson property, where a huge battle ensues.
There's too many of them!
God damn.
This might be the most difficult part of the entire game. You're meant to hold out against a horde of enemies while a song performed by the in-universe band Old Gods of Asgard plays. The song itself is actually performed by Poets of the Fall, a real-life band from Finland. Sam Lake, the writer at Remedy, was friends with the lead vocalist and asked him to create a song from a poem he had written. The song Late Goodbye would be used for Max Payne 2. Poets of the Fall has appeared in every Remedy game in one way or another ever since, except Quantum Break. They even have another song in this game that's presented as being from Poets of the Fall, War, which is a great song and is accompanied by a great music video, starring Alan Wake. Does that kind of break the space-time continuum? Yeah, but it's still really cool. So we've made it to the Anderson farm, but in order to get to the farmhouse, we need to go through a big open field. Ooh, a big open field. Ooh. Oh, holy shit! Excuse me. So they make it to the farmhouse and get the power on. A record starts playing in the living room, another song by the Old Gods of Asgard. Instead of going out and looking for Cynthia, they decide to get drunk. While knocked out, the Cauldron Lake booze causes Alan to remember everything.
It was a crazy drunken dream, and yet it was more than that. It was the truth, a suppressed memory unearthed by the Andersons' moonshine. I remembered thinking I caught a glimpse of her form underwater, sinking into the darkness. Beyond this lost memory, there was nothing. I couldn't find her in all that blackness. I must have thought she drowned.
Look at the cabin. Is there someone in the window?
Alice?
Maybe she didn't drown after all. Maybe she's inside.
Alice!
Yes.
Alice?
She's not here. You were foolish to think so. No, she's dead. She drowned.
No, no, no!
It's your fault your wife is dead. You are guilty. All she wanted was to help you right. You killed her.
Ah!
Oh, hush. There's still hope. Cauldron Lake is a special place. Here, you have the power to change things. She wanted you to write. I will tell you what to do.
She had Alice, and the manuscript was the ransom for her. Yes. All right. I'll fix it. I'll bring her back. No. I wrote it. I remembered it all now. In the dark, I'd written for days, a week, almost a complete manuscript of a novel entitled Departure. Jagger had been my editor, whispering in my ear, making sure that the unfolding story would make her more and more powerful. I thought I was saving Alice. Even with the cobwebs she put in my head, some part of me had been aware enough to write my escape into the story, to bring a light into the cabin to release me before I could finish. To interrupt the horror story before the ending, where darkness consumed everything and everyone. Zane was weak and far away, but I had written him into the story, and his light had been enough to set me free.
It isn't here now. I'm here because it was written. I brought the light to set you free. You must hurry. It will know I'm here. It will be back soon. It stole the skin of my Barbara a long time ago. She looks so old.
I had woken up, confused and groggy, my mind consumed by darkness and fear. All I could do was to escape. The week spent in the cabin had taken its toll. I was barely conscious and fading fast. It had to have cost Zane terribly, thrown him even deeper into whatever dark place he now haunted. But he had managed to weaken the dark presence, kept me safe that night.
I wrote it. It's my fault.
That's right, James Joyce. It's your fault and you're gonna pay for it.
What an ending. We're actually getting pretty close to the end of the game now, only 2 more episodes left, which is why I'm going to be cutting these in between segments from here on out. We're just going to go straight into the next episode. Here we are, back at the police station. The streets are empty tonight as people prepare for Deerfest. Sheriff Breaker and Detective Nightingale are up late tonight trying to make sense of the seized manuscript pages.
Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent. There's no way you're walking out of here. You hear me in there, Bret Easton Ellis? Huh?
But they don't get a chance to properly question Alan and Barry as the darkness shows up. I mean, obviously it does. Why wouldn't it?
Get back in the cell, Stephen King. The only way you're leaving this place is over my dead...
Wait a minute.
So Alan and Sarah head through town in order to get a helicopter. It's the quickest way to get to Cynthia Weaver, who's been living in a nearby decommissioned power plant. The trip through town is tough. The Dark Presence is throwing as many enemies at you as it can, practically the entire town. But I have noticed there are no female taken. Kinda strange. Is the Dark Presence sexist? The Deerfest parade float gets possessed and kinda just drives by. Ooh, scary.
Barry?
Why isn't he inside?
Oh God! Oh God!
Barry! Look out! Barry, move! Barry!
He made it inside, Wake. He's okay.
We can make it through the bookstore. Wheeler should be waiting for us in the backyard.
Get the hell down or I'll call the sheriff.
Oh, hi, Doc. I've got it. Don't worry about it.
Sarah, about time somebody showed up. All this shooting in the air is idiotic. One of these days they'll kill somebody. And over Deerfest.
I know. Go back to bed. He's got a point, Wake. Look, this town can't take this.
It's me they want. The sooner I get out of here, the sooner you can all get back to life as usual.
After a quick skirmish in front of the church, we meet back up with Barry.
Did you call 911?
Guess that one saw the light, huh? You didn't like that one? A tough audience. Well, I got plenty more.
What are the Christmas lights for?
Protection, man. Like garlic against vampires.
Vampires.
The helicopter's just across the parking lot and up the hill. Come on.
Together, they head to the fire station and get a helicopter, but not before another big arena fight where the Dark Presence throws shit at them. So damn. But they make their escape just in time. Attempting to land at the power plant, they're attacked by a swarm of crows. Alan falls out of the helicopter and has to make his way across the river to the power plant. It's actually in this warehouse we can listen to War by Poets of the Fall. I mean, we can't listen to it right now for obvious reasons, but it is a good song, I swear. It's around this point in the game where enemy encounters start to become a bit stale. They try to mix things up with tougher enemies, but the formula for killing them is pretty much the same. Strafe around and shine the flashlight at them, and then shoot them until they're dead. Even with possessed objects, it is just dodge them and shine the flashlight at them. My biggest hope is that Alan Wake 2 finds a way to improve or completely reinvent the gameplay.
The rotating bridge was open. I had to find a way to close it.
Oh shit, that actually scared me. So we cross the magic bridge and meet up with Sarah and Barry in the helicopter. They use their searchlight to help us out a little, but the birds come back and force them away again. It's after this we finally meet Cynthia Weaver.
Hold it right there!
Miss Weaver, Cynthia, I'm a friend.
Prove it!
You knew Zane, Thomas Zane. You're the Lady of the Light in the song. You can help me.
About time. Young man, I've been waiting a very long time for you.
Cynthia explains what really happened to Tom after Barbara drowned. I'll just let her explain.
I knew them both, Tom and Barbara. I had such a crush on him. Such a beautiful man. I was jealous. There was a part of me that was maybe a little glad when she had the accident. And then Tom started writing and woke the darkness up. He tried to bring her back, but you can't do that. There are no free rides like that. Which looked like her, but it wasn't. Barbara was sweet. He didn't understand until it was too late. He tried to undo it, wrote himself, her, everything he'd ever written out of the world. Oh, he was so famous. And afterward, no one knew. Oh, Tom. He left only one thing behind in my care, in case it happened again. Insurance. He trusted me. Or perhaps used me a little. Tom knew how I felt. Knew I wouldn't refuse him. I built the well-lit room and put it there. It's been waiting for you. We are characters trapped in a story you have written, and none of us will survive to see the end of it if the darkness isn't stopped. She'll twist the story to her own dark ends.
How do you know all this?
Tom, that's the way he wrote it. He still talks to me, in television, beyond, from below. We have both been touched by the darkness, young man. He saved us both with light, but the darkness stays with you. Leaves a stain.
On the way to the well-lit room, Alan calls Barry and hears the chopper go down over the phone. He leaves the pipe against Cynthia's pleading to go save them. And obviously they're fine. I mean, come on, they're main characters. There's a big fight as they retreat to the base of the dam. Alan is forced to stay behind in order to let them through and has to find his own way up. The Dark Presence, obviously pissed that Alan is about to actually defeat it, starts throwing a tantrum. It hurls things at Alan, tries destroying the catwalk in order to stop him, but Alan already wrote this page and he survives, so, no big deal.
See? It says so right here on page 288.
So we make it to the well-lit room and see what insurance lies in the shoebox.
Take it, and I won't need to worry about the room anymore, because 6 and 33 and 118 need changing soon, and I don't want to climb up the ladder to change them because it's very late, and I'm tired. And if you take it, I won't have to do that anymore.
The page was autobiographical, a memory from my childhood. But I didn't write this. It was a page written by Thomas Zane. None of them were supposed to exist anymore.
Alan, 7 years old, would fight sleep to the bitter end. When he did sleep, he soon woke up, screaming, the nightmares fresh in his mind. One evening, his mother, sitting by his bed, offered him an old light switch. She called it the clicker, and flicking the switch would turn on a magical light that would drive the beast away. To imbue the talisman with all possible power, she added that it had been given to her by Alan's father. Alan never knew him, and anything of his took on mythical proportions in his mind. With the clicker firmly in his hand, Alan finally slept like a baby. Now, almost 30 years later, Alan thought of this as he stood on the rim of Cauldron Lake, the clicker in his hand. He took a deep breath and jumped.
My mind swirled. I'd given the clicker to Alice, yet it was here. Zane had written it into existence in a story I had written. I can get to her now. I can finish this.
Yeah, this game is fucking awesome. Episode 6 starts with another flashback. New York City, 2 years ago. Alan has a hangover and he needs his Max Pain pills.
Breakfast of champions.
We get to watch some normal TV here, and by normal I mean late night talk show, so it's like the worst normal TV has to offer. There's a high-res version of this video in the game files, and my god, does the lip sync truly suck.
I've been talking with the best-selling author Alan Wake about his new book, The Sudden Stop.
Yeah, good read. Go buy it.
No, it is a good read. Look, I'm gonna be honest here.
Is that wise?
No, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Why the hell did you kill Casey? What the hell were you thinking, man?
Good riddance. No, seriously though. 7 years and 6 books is a long time. He was a gloomy guy to spend all your working hours with, and it was a good run. But it's time to explore new things. My next book will be a departure from the old for me. But I gotta say, I'm glad to be back home in New York.
Well, you've certainly been on the news a lot lately. Lots of parties and,
Uh-oh.
You got into a fight with some paparazzi.
Oh, man. Well, that guy was really in my face. I lost my temper. I know that wasn't cool.
You are famous for that temper.
Well, I did also write several books.
Well, your latest novel is called The Sudden Stop, and it's in bookstores now. Go get it. I want to thank all our guests for the evening. Alan Wake, Sam Lake. Once more, do the face for us, Sam. There it is. And our musical guests, Poets of the Fall. Thank you, and good night.
I didn't say anything stupid if that's what you want to know.
Okay, Grumpy. You want to ask me?
Are you going to start with me about drinking now?
We see more of Alan and Alice's relationship.
This morning, I was angry because you said you'd be home at midnight and you showed up at 7 a.m. and passed out in mid-sentence. Now I'm over it. Are you angry?
This goddamn tour. It's gotten out of hand.
Oh, honey. It's almost over, right? We can get back to normal. Then you can start writing again.
I'm sorry, honey.
Alan, you're not thinking straight. Just take a shower and go back to bed, huh?
Yeah, you're right, honey. I'm sorry. Once this is over, let's go away together. A vacation. Just you and me. Some peace and quiet.
We also see that Alan hasn't been able to write a new story in 2 years. Holy shit, bro. You gotta step up your game, man. Stephen King writes at least 2 books a year. So Alan leaves the well-lit room, and somehow the night turned into day in a matter of minutes. This whole episode is just one big road trip. One long, straight line to an end goal. And it's also the shortest episode, and most of it is just pure gameplay. Is that a Verizon billboard? Energizer and Verizon. A match made in hell. We take a walk through a tunnel and, just like that, it's night again. You thought it was going to be easy, didn't you? Like I said, this episode is just one gauntlet. One big battle. One last push to the lake. There's a couple of quiet moments, but for the most part, the dial stays firmly at 10. We can find a hotel where Agent Nightingale was staying here. There's really nothing here except a few snapshots of some of the characters and a lot of beer cans. This episode's really not that difficult. It really is just driving and occasionally walking. There's a scrapyard where you fight another bulldozer, and there's this cool change in locale with this long abandoned mining town. There's also this hilarious yet still badass as fuck set piece where you mow down Taken with a spotlight. That's right, in any other game you'd mow down enemies with a big ass machine gun, but not here. It's actually impressive the amount of ideas and set pieces they were able to get out of what seemed to be a pretty straightforward idea. You think there wouldn't be a whole lot to do with this flashlight mechanic, but here we are using a spotlight to kill. So we make it to Cauldron Lake and come face to face with this tornado of darkness, whirling cars, boats, and train cars at us. We have to get to the center of it, so we jump. Okay. We jump. Damn. So we jump across from ledge to ledge and shoot some flares into the center of the tornado. And it seems to do something. Once the tornado is extinguished, Alan does what he was always gonna do and jumps into the lake. So, that's the end of the game, guys. That's it. I'm kidding. So it turns out it was all a dream, and that's where the game ends. I'm kidding again, but could you imagine if they actually did that? No, it's clearly an illusion created by the Dark Presence to try and trick Alan. We grab the clicker, and Tom shows up one last time to impart some wisdom in his soothing voice.
You must find your way to the cabin. It stands in your way. It won't let you pass. It has no heart. It's filled with darkness. You must fill its heart with light. Don't mind him. He's Mr. Square. Your friends will meet him when you're gone.
I don't know if I trust this guy with his creepy fucking smile.
Use the clicker.
At the bottom of the lake, we use light to turn words into real objects, like turning this thermos into a thermos that we can pick up, or turning the word phone into a phone that we can pick up.
I followed the idea of a path.
The Dark Presence tries one last time to discourage Alan.
I'm leaving you, Alan. I met something. I'm in love with someone else.
Alice? No, what do you say? You can't.
You don't love me. You don't even love yourself. All you do is torture yourself with work you can't do anymore.
No, I love you more than anything in the world. You're my muse. Who are you? What have you done with my Alice?
Alan? What are you doing? Put the light back on. What are you doing, Alan? Stop! Put the light back on!
It wasn't true. Nothing like that had ever happened.
We eventually make it to the cabin and enter.
Now you will never get her back. I am much older than you. Older than your first work of art. I will find a new face to wear. Someone else to dream me free.
I could feel Alice's presence close by. I understood what I had to do now. I knew how to write the ending to Departure. There's light and there's darkness. Cause and effect. There's guilt and there's atonement. But the scales always need to balance. Everything has a price. That's where Zane had gone wrong. There's a long journey through the night back into the light.
Alice? Alice? Oh no!
So, with an ending like that, I think it's only appropriate that we go over the story one last time. Sometime in the 1960s or so, Thomas Zane met Barbara Jagger, and they quickly fell in love. Zane was the poet, and Barbara was his muse. It's unclear why, but at some point they move into the cabin on Cauldron Lake. If I had to guess, my money would be on Hartman giving them the idea. Hartman seemed to know something about Cauldron Lake that Zane didn't. And after living there for a while, Barbara Jagger would drown in the lake in 1970. Grief-stricken, Zane had no idea what to do, so Hartman gave him the idea to write. He revealed to Zane the lake's power and convinced him to bring Barbara back to life through writing. So he does, neither man knowing just how badly they had messed up. Barbara soon convinces Tom to keep writing a story that would involve a dark presence growing strong and taking over the world. Tom only realizing after it was too late for him that this thing telling him to write wasn't Barbara. You see, for hundreds or even possibly thousands of years, a dark presence had existed at the bottom of Cauldron Lake, in a dimension called the Dark Place, where works of art can be made to come true. It requires someone with a strong imagination, someone who can create, an artist, someone like an author, a poet, a painter, or even a singer-songwriter. You can't just go to the lake, write something, and expect it to come true. You have to follow its rules. First, it'll take something from you. For Tom, it was Barbara, and for the Andersons, it was their minds and their youth, and for Alan, it was his wife. It will take something from you and use it as a bargaining chip, saying you can bring it back as long as you play by its rules. And from then on, it will slowly influence your work until it's the center of the story, until it has control in the story, until it's unstoppable. And by then, it'll be too late to change the story. So the person influencing Tom was the dark presence, luring Barbara to trick him. Once he realizes this, he pulls the biggest Chad move and rips out its heart. But that wasn't enough to kill it. He goes back and writes himself out of existence, and a way to force the darkness back into the lake. He added a loophole that anything left in a shoebox will stay preserved. This is where Cynthia Weaver comes in, a local reporter who's secretly in love with Thomas Zane. It's unclear how, but she was touched by the darkness, a touch that left some of it in her. Tom came to her and asked her to take care of the shoebox, and so she does, for 40 years. It wasn't long after this that the volcano underneath Cauldron Lake would erupt, causing the island, Zane, and the darkness to sink into the depths. Now Zane was stuck in the dark place. 40 years later, Alice would read a book written by Emil Hartman and would call him to discuss Alan's writer's block. The stars aligned. Hartman knew he could use Alan, and when they arrived in Bright Falls, so too did the dark presence see it could use him. So it did all that it could to trick Alan. It gave him the key to a cabin that didn't exist. It tricked Alan into thinking Alice had drowned in the lake. It convinced him to write. Soon he would realize, just as Tom had before, and would write himself into the story in order to save Alice. He wrote for Tom to come save them, and so he did. It's unclear how long this dark presence had existed, or how long it's been trapped in Cauldron Lake. Surely it had made more attempts to escape than just the ones in the last 40 years. It seems that every time it gets close, something stops it. It never actually succeeded in all these thousands of years. Alan was the one who came closest to setting it free. If it wasn't for Thomas Zane intervening, the dark presence would have most likely succeeded this time around. So much of the story had already been written, and there was only one more page left. Everything that happened in the game up until the final moments happened because Alan had written it. He took these real people and made them characters in his story. Some would die and others would come close. There would be tension and action and horror. Everything a good story has. There's something Alan said at the very end that on my first playthrough seemed to come out of nowhere.
There's light and there's darkness. Cause and effect. There's guilt and there's atonement. But the scales always need to balance. Everything has a price. That's where Zane had gone wrong.
Upon replaying the game, it does make a lot of sense. Thomas banished the dark presence back into the lake, but not before giving it a new form. The way the dark place seems to work is that it has to take something before it can give something. Zane wrote Barbara back to life without giving his own, and for that, the darkness was able to break through and use him. Even after banishing it back into the lake, it still had enough power to keep the form of Barbara. Alan was able to use the light in order to destroy this form of the dark presence, but it still existed and it always would. All Alan could do was give himself to the lake in order to save Alice. But there's something I haven't actually touched on yet. The clicker. So, is Alan even real? I'm serious. This one scene completely broke my understanding of the story. Thomas Zane 40 years before the events of the game, and 7 years before the birth of Alan Wake himself, wrote a page describing the clicker he was given as a child, describing him, naming him, and the clicker itself, despite Alan giving it to Alice 3 years prior on the other side of the country, was in this shoebox. There really is no explanation for this other than Alan is a character in a story written by Thomas Zane. He was always destined to come to Cauldron Lake. His whole existence's sole purpose was to trap himself and the dark presence at the bottom of the lake to keep it there seemingly for the rest of time. Alan, along with everybody else he encounters, were characters in Tom's story. So then, did they really succeed in stopping the darkness?
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
Alan, wake up.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was Alan Wake. But not really. And I'm not talking about Alan Wake 2. I'm talking about Alan Wake's special episodes as well as Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which I will be taking a look at in a future video. Alan Wake is a beautiful game. It's amazing. And although the gameplay itself does get a little stale near the end, it's really the story that keeps you hooked. Or at least it kept me hooked. There's just so much charm in this small town Pacific Northwest setting, which is why I'm really looking forward to the rest of Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2. I want to see more of this setting. I want to see more of these characters. I cannot recommend this game enough. And if you're a fan of Max Payne or Quantum Break or Control, trust me, you will love this game. There's also a lot more to discuss about Alan Wake, the subtext surrounding the Alex Casey books and other small elements of the story, but I quickly ran out of time making this video. Hold on. I think Santa left me an early Christmas present. What? New original Bazooka bubble flavored soda. Bubble gum flavored soda. Shit. Holy shit, that's really good. Thanks, Santa. I hope to get through the rest of Alan Wake soon, but I think there's another horror-themed video game I need to get to first. So, stay tuned, stay safe, and have a very Merry Christmas. Drop the book again. Don't trust me with books. I'll fuck those books up. Don't trust me to hold a book. I still don't understand why Nightingale was even there. What the hell was he doing there?